Ayelet Libson Hoffmann has been teaching for us for a very long time, introductions to all the Masechet, and she's been writing a book with the introductions to the Masechet, and we're very excited to have her. Well, I'm sure when it comes out, everyone will be very thrilled to buy her book. And it's a really important book because it's a really good way to kind of have a sense of the background to all the Masechet. That's why I love having these introductions. It gives you the perspective, which is really important. And with that, we'll hear from Ayelet.
Thank you, Michelle. It's very good to be here, very exciting, and always nice to participate in joyful moments during this difficult time. So, thank you to all for affording that opportunity. I want to speak briefly about um, the idea of uh, repentance, tshuva, within Seder Nezikin. And I want to start from a famous statement that the Gemara brings in Masechet Baba Kama, where there's a discussion there between two Amoraim about what one should study. If you only have time to study one thing, if you're not going to have time to study the whole Shas, what should you study if you want to become a Chassid? Amar Rav Yehuda, Hayman de Bai lemehave Chasida, Lekayem Milei de Nezikin. Rav Yehuda said, one who wants to be a chassid, who wants to be pious, should observe the matters of Nezikin. Rava Amar Milei de Avot, ve'amre la Milei de Brachot. Rava said it's the matters of Masechet Avot. That's what you should learn if you want to be pious. And some say, or perhaps a different version of Rava's statement, you should learn the matters of Brachot. So I want to start actually from Avot and from Brachot, because I think that these are much more intuitive things to consider for a person who wants to become pious, right? We can actually see here three different realms of a person's life. The matters of Avot, what's really Avot? Avot is it's ethics, right? We often call it ethics of the fathers. So that the matters of ethics are often related to what kind of person am I, right? What is my morality? How do I become a more moral person? So it has to do with society, but I think it's more focused on the self. And brachot represents an entirely different realm. It's the realm of ben adam lamakom, right? Of saying brachot, of saying Baruch atah Hashem. So it's being in dialogue with God. And these are things that we intuitively associate with what it means to be a chassid, to be someone who's pious, either the realm of ethics or the more religious realm, the realm of ben adam lamakom. And so, against this backdrop, Rav Yehuda's statement is actually pretty surprising. That Rav Yehuda said one who wants to be pious should observe the matters of Nezikin. Nezikin is really the classic realm of Ben Adam Lechavero. It's not ethics, it's not being focused on myself, on what kind of person am I. It's not the realm, the religious realm, the vertical axis of between myself and God. It's the horizontal axis of who am I with society, right? And that's why really Nizikin, I think for those who have been studying it throughout, it's really the most similar to other legal systems that we recognize. And there's something very, very familiar about Nizikin in general. So the question is, why does Rav Yehuda think this? What is it about Nizikin that makes a person more pious, a person more chassid? And I think that we can see, throughout Masechet, throughout Seder Nezikin, we can see many different examples. But I want to focus on one specific example, which is also related to this time of the year, to Elul, and to think about what exactly is unique about tshuva in the realm of Nezikin. So the Mishnah in Masechet Baba Kama discusses in the eighth chapter the damages that are created when a person injures another person. And the Mishnah there, I want to look at two Mishnayot from chapter 8, the first Mishnah and the last Mishnah. The first Mishnah says, "Hachovel b'chavero chayav alav mishum chamisha dvarim." So one who wounds another person is liable to compensate him on five counts, five different kinds of compensation. Nezek, injury, right? The direct damages that can be seen by the injury. Tsa'ar, so the pain that a person experiences when they were hurt. Ripui, so the healing or the medical costs that need to be incurred in order to return a person to where they were before they were injured. Shevet, loss of income, what they can't earn while they're sitting at home after their injury. And boshet, so indignity or shame. And so the Mishnah is spelling out here these five different categories. And in general, these categories are understood as we estimate what is the each of these damages for kind of the average person, for the reasonable person. Okay, except for boshet, which is generally understood to be something which is something more subjective. So it depends on the status of the person. That's how we will determine the fall from grace, the shame that a person experiences depends on their status to begin with. Now I want to look at the last Mishnah of this chapter. And the Mishnah here says that after a person, right, basically the rest of this chapter in the Mishnah details the details of each of these five categories. But the concluding Mishnah of the chapter says, "Af al pi shehu noten lo," wait, I'm going to lift it up a bit because I know that my head is bobbing around on the bottom somewhere, even though I can't see it. "Af al pi shehu noten lo." So even though a person has paid all of these damages, all these different categories, there's still one thing left that needs to be taken care of. "Eino nimcha lo ad sheyevakesh mimeno." He's not forgiven until he seeks forgiveness from the injured party. Shene'emar, a verse regarding Avraham and Avimelech. Avimelech, who took Sarah and then returned her to Avraham. And the verse says, "V'ata hashev eshet ha'ish ki navihu." Okay, it's not enough to just give the wife back. You're going to have to also speak to him and create some kind of a dialogue until Avraham will pray for you. Okay, so the verse here is emphasizing this kind of relational aspect that needs to happen in addition to the payment for the damages. And what's interesting is that the Gemara on this Mishnah cites a Braita, which at first seems to be very, very similar, but with one important difference. So the Braita says as follows, Tanu Rabbanan, Kol elu she'amru, all the sums that were detailed in the previous Mishnah, which we didn't read, Dmei boshto. This refers to the category of boshet, of humiliation. Aval tsa'aro, but in order to compensate for tsa'ar, for the category of pain, afilu hevi kol elei nevayot sheba'olam, en nimcha lo ad sheyevakesh mimeno. Even if he brought all of these special rams of nevayot, then the transgression isn't forgiven until he requests forgiveness. As it is stated, Hashev eshet ha'ish ki navihu ve'itpalel ba'adcha. So the same verse, right? So it seems to be that the Braita is very, very close to the Mishnah. But what's the difference? That the Braita is adding one more point, right? That it's saying all of these payments that have been described earlier, this refers to boshet. But sa'ar, pain, that is something that even if a person gives a huge sum of payment, there won't be forgiveness, there won't be mechila, ad sheyevakesh mimeno. So this seems a bit counterintuitive because, as I mentioned before, sa'ar is considered an objective category in general, right? That we estimate what is the pain that a person would be willing to incur in order to have this damage done to them, while boshet is something that is more subjective. And I think for that reason, Rashi comments on this Braita. Oh, sorry, I didn't bring you Rashi, but Rashi says that that the tsa'ar that is described in this Braita is the tsa'ar of the person suffering about his shame. Okay, Rashi says, "Shedoeg al boshto eino nimcha lo." Okay, so what he's saying, what Rashi is saying here, he's actually turning things on its head. He's saying the what you cannot compensate for monetarily, but rather you must have a conversation and you must ask for mechila is specifically the tsar. What kind of tsar? It's the tsar about a person's shame. So what Rashi is doing in the way that he's explaining this Braita is he's making the point that in order to, beyond all the five payments that you have to compensate a person monetarily, there's another aspect, and that's the aspect of mechila, of forgiveness, for which you have to have a conversation. You have to have bakashat mechila. You have to have, the person has to, the injurer has to go to the injured party and has to ask him for forgiveness. And this relational view of damages, I think, is very reminiscent of an idea that many of us will recognize from the Mishnah in Yoma. The Mishnah in Yoma says, Averot sheben adam lamakom Yom Kippurim mechaper, right? Transgressions between man and God, Yom Kippurim affects atonement. But Averot sheben adam lechavero, and Yom Kippurim mechaper ad sheyiratzeh et chavero. For transgressions between man and man, Yom Kippurim doesn't affect atonement until one has appeased the other person. So we see this in both of these Mishnayot, or the Mishnah and the Braita, the idea that the fate of the injurer is in the injured party's hand. And the same principle is applying in both of these texts, but there's a difference with regard to the initial assumption that the Mishnah is responding to, right? In Yoma, the initial assumption is that Yom Kippurim is enough to affect atonement, and the Mishnah has to emphasize, no, you have, in Ben Adam Lechavero, you have to go and have a conversation. In the Mishnah in Baba Kama, the initial assumption is that payment is sufficient. And the Mishnah is emphasizing, no, you have to go and have a conversation. So both of these Mishnayot are emphasizing the idea, the innovation, the chiddush of both of these Mishnayot is that transgressions against another person, it's not just an abstract damage that, oh, I created a damage or I made a transgression, and now I need to, create a metaphysical solution by paying damages or by bringing a korban or by fasting on Yom Kippur. No, let's not forget that this is about relationships. These averot are about relationships. You hurt a person. You didn't just create a damage. You didn't just create nezek. You hurt a person. And so in addition to the payments or in addition to fasting on Yom Kippur, you have to go and have a conversation with a person. You have to leratzot the other person. You have to come and face up to your to what you did and ask for the forgiveness of another person. And I think that that is perhaps what is lying behind, at least partially, what Rav Yehuda said in the statement that one who wants to become pious should engage specifically in Dinei Nezikin, right? Because in contrast to Kodshim that we're going to start now, which are, you know, even when they weren't theoretical, they were related to the sphere of Ben Adam Lamakom. And similarly, Brachot, and maybe similarly also Avot, and many areas of the Torah are actually about a person's self-perfection in relationship with God. Nezikin, what's unique about Nezikin is that it's really about being in relationships with other people. And Rav Yehuda is telling us that's an important part of becoming a better person, of becoming a chassid. We cannot do that in a vacuum. We're always going to be part of a society. And when we're part of a society, then becoming a better person, becoming a chassid means facing up to our shortcomings by owning up to them in relationship to other people. And indeed, we don't have time to go into this, but on this Mishnah in Masechet Yoma, we find many stories about Chachamim, different Chachamim, and how they responded when they were either the injurer or the injured party. And we can see there that it's not so easy, right? That even being the injured party sometimes can be a very difficult experience, and it's not so easy to forgive, and it's certainly not so easy to ask for forgiveness. And the Chachamim tell these stories about themselves in order to explain to us that yes, it's a high bar, it's something that's difficult to do, but as we study Nezikin, and more than that, as we engage in Nezikin, as we bring Nezikin to life, as we observe the matters of Nezikin, right? Lekayem milei de Nezikin, then that is really what ultimately turns us into people who are more Hasidim, who are more God-fearing, and enables us to reach a higher level of self-perfection and bringing the world to become a better place.
Beautiful. Really connected with also the end of the Masechet with the difficulty to forgive. The Rav Shimon ben Gamliel couldn't really completely forgive. Thank you, Ayelet. We're now